Right, well, it's a really cold morning. Beautiful day. And see if it'll start. Right, well, it started perfectly this time, again. So we've done nothing to the car, but we had all this trouble with it stalling, and then we had trouble, it wouldn't start for 3 days, and then suddenly, without doing anything, it started up and it's been fine. So what I've done is I have actually ordered a fuel pump for it, a new fuel pump, and I think we'll just fit the fuel pump and see what happens. Right, nice, fairly clean wheels and a fairly clean car, because it's been returned from the Jaguar dealer. Oh look, really nice inside, nice and clean. Right, well, I've got my lovely Jag back, and it's had its test, its Ministry of Transport test. That's interesting, actually. They've put the seat belts in, clipped them in at the back. I believe, and I may be wrong, maybe just for show, but I believe it's because they tested them. So I'm giving them the credit, but I have to say, I'm really pleased. Now, just a very brief point about this car. I had a number of comments, and I understand totally, and I'm very pleased that I got these comments, and people were saying that, you know, I was possibly spending a lot of money sending this car to a main dealer, and that I should look for a specialist or a smaller garage to do it, and that's a really fair point, and I accept it. But I would just point out this. First of all, this particular car has had a service stamp. It's been serviced by this main dealer, the same garage, from the time it was new. And they have a complete record of this car. They know everything that's been done to it, and when, etc., etc. And that stamp is actually, you know, worth something, really. It's because it does put some value on the car, especially as the car gets older. This car is a 2001. Now, as far as price is concerned, I'm not convinced that this car is actually, I've been charged a lot more by this main dealer than I would have been charged at a specialist. First of all, this main dealer, Jaguar have, like a number of other manufacturers, have suddenly, or not suddenly, but they've accepted or realized that the older cars are actually an advert to them, and they try to encourage the upkeep of them. I mean, to be honest with you, it's better advert to be seeing an immaculate or a well-kept Jaguar driving around the streets than a tatty one. In fact, the tatty one shouldn't be on the road from their point of view, from a marketing point of view. So that they encourage people who want to look after their cars, and they give some fairly big discounts. I got basically I got the service and the MOT done for half price, and on the work that they did for the car, they actually gave me about a 20% discount on top of the price of the additional work that I had done. So in the end, I paid, before the VAT, before the government tax, I paid about £650, and for that I got the MOT, I got the service, which was a 10,000 mile service, and then I had, in addition, they gave it what they call a health check, so they checked some other things, basically to make sure the car's okay, over and above the service. Then I had a new wiper, I had a anti-roll bar, one of the joints new joint, and I had new discs and new pads at the front, and all of that cost me about £650 plus VAT, so it came up to around 800, which is a lot of money. But you know, when you take off the tax, you know, 650 is, or whatever is the price that the garage took, and that includes the test and everything, and that also includes, which I wouldn't get at the specialist, or at least I don't get. That is, they come and collect the car, and they drive it to the garage, and they deliver it back, and they give it a full valet. I mean, it's been cleaned inside, and it's been cleaned outside. Now, all right, that's not a big deal, perhaps, but it is in a way. It's still a factor. So I get delivered back. I don't have to bother about taking the car there, and then coming home. I don't have to worry about somebody taking me to the garage to pick the car up. They just come collect. So all of that, and the fact I've got the stamp from the main dealer, I think is worth whatever extra, though I don't even think I paid that much extra. So anyway, that's my monologue on the service of the car. But what I have got now is I've got a car which I'm really pleased with. They say to me that this is one of the best cars of this particular model that they have in, and I'm really pleased with it. There's not a lot wrong with it. I notice I've got a little bit of sagging here of my roof, which is a problem that you're going to get with these cars. I don't know. You know, eventually that's going to have to be dealt with, I guess, if it gets any worse. But apart from a few bits and pieces which, like that, there's very little seemingly wrong with this car. There's hardly a mark on the outside, and the inside is like new. And it runs really well. It's done 55,000, I think it is now, maybe a little bit more. And it just is terrific. So I'm really pleased with that. Though it's cost me that money, this is now a good thing. Right, as far as the Dodge is concerned, quite pleased with it. We seem to have got somewhere. Let's see if we can start this little girl up. We turn the ignition on, pull this choke out. Now, so Andy's fitted this switch down here, which, if I push it forward, it should start the fan up. And it has. Oops. That's that bearing again now. That'll go off hopefully in a minute. Because Andy has said he'll come along and take the fan out and open it up and sort out the bearings, service them basically. That noise does go off, at least it used to. It is blowing quite a bit of air actually. Right, so what we've done actually is this switch here, which is the problem, this switch for the blower, it's got 3 speeds, but 2 of the speeds actually, the resistors had burnt out, so that's why we fitted this other switch. I'll turn that off. Anyway, I went on eBay last night and I found an NOS, a new old stock switch, which is supposed to be for this car. I was a bit dubious about it. I sent a picture of it actually to Andy to have a look, because it's got a spring in it which I don't understand. I think it's a slightly different switch with it had 2 resistors by the look of it. I think it's, well, we'll see, but the advert, I emailed the guy and asked him in America, and he confirmed it was for this car, or it fits it at least, but I got a feeling it's a slightly different switch. It could be that it's maybe only 2 speeds, but that's not important, doesn't matter. As long as it'll fit in here. Replace this one, and then I can have the actual switch working instead of this one under here, this temporary one. And then of course what we've realized is that this car has got a cigarette lighter which works. I'll push that in and see what happens. Well, it doesn't want to stay. That's it. That's it, stayed in. Right, so I can use this as a powered lead uptake for my sat nav. It's only 6 volt, obviously, but that's enough. It'll run the sat nav. Well, yeah, that's right. Let's have a look. There we go. Look at that. That's really. I mean, that's. You know, I get impressed with really strange things. That's a 70-year-old cigarette, or they used to call them cigar lighters, didn't they? But that's a 70-year-old cigarette lighter that still works. The radio doesn't work now, but we'll sort that out. So what we think has happened in the radio is the inverters burnt out. That's what the smoke was from, because this is the inside of this radio has been replaced with a modern sort of analog radio, which is run by 12 volt, and obviously the car is 6 volt. So there's an inverter been added in the radio to give it the 12 volts to run the radio, which that is what we think is burnt out. But actually this car's running nicely. Now it's warmed up a bit. It's really good. It's very responsive to the throttle. Anyway, when Andy comes and fixes it, this switch here, then I won't have the whining noise. That little switch works all right. Okay, let's turn this off. Okay. That's the Dodge. Right, well, here's the piece that I bought for that Dodge. You see it's a heater blower switch. Well, it's listed, that is all the models. I don't know what this means by master, comfort master models. There were really only one model, but I think it's some sort of generic switch that fits all of them, and hopefully it'll be alright. But those are the 2 resistors, I guess, I'm guessing, and I just couldn't figure out what this spring is here. Let's have a look. Because you pull it out and it clicks. Anyway, it's new old stock, and so I've ordered it from the States, and they've already sent it right away. It's quite good, actually. You know, it's amazing, isn't it? 70-year-old car, new old stock. I've just tried to buy another armrest for my Jaguar that's got the cup holders in it, and they don't. Well, obviously they don't sell it now. You can't get it. It's easier to get parts for a 70-year-old Dodge from the United States than it is to get parts for your 18-year-old, or whatever it is, Jag. Actually, it's not even that, 15, 16 years old Jag in England. Amazing, really. Meanwhile, some of my huskies are just sitting here in the sun. It's really cold this morning, but now it's warmed up. Oh, come on, old boy. This is Storm. Hello, Storm. How are you? That's amazing. Every night here, these crows all congregate here, all around our house, because it's in the field. Look at them. Hundreds of them. They just congregate here for a little bit, and then they fly off to roost for the night. I don't know whether this camera picks them up, but they just, sometimes in the evening the whole sky is just black with them. Absolutely beautiful. We're doing some work here, putting a new fence in. That old fence will come down. other side of the fence now. Have an entrance coming in here at the top where the fence is. I'm taking a section of that fence down. Come on. Well, it's a pissy morning. Look at that rain, mud. Well, I'm just gonna try it again. So it's not so cold today, just damp. See what happens. Fired up, fine. Do you know, I get so pissed with this car. It wouldn't drive, wouldn't even start for 3 days. Now it's fine. Ugh. Right, well, it is a pissy day, and my van's not here. That's because, and the Huskies are not here. And that's because my wife's taken the van with the dogs, and she's gone racing this morning. She's racing this weekend. That's Husky racing. We've been doing Husky racing for 35 years probably, and I stopped racing a couple of years ago. My wife carried on, and it's another story, all of the Husky racing scene, but we won't go into that at this stage. So anyway, the van's not here, but I'm just going to show you the Big Red. Yeah, I mean, these are 2 new tyres that she's got for it. Actually, you wouldn't believe they were 2, would you, when you look at them? There we are, that's 2 tyres. Two big rear tyres for my ATV. Now this is our ATV, our Big Red. Now, this is an old machine. And well, I'll tell you how old it is. We bought this Big Red second hand. We bought it second hand about 28 years ago. Yeah, it's maybe 26 years ago. Sometime in the early 1990s. So I've had it since then. Now, I can probably count on one hand the times we've serviced it. And what it's used for is for training our dogs in the forest. That's its real use. We take it out in this trailer and hook a team of dogs up to it. I mean, years ago when we had a lot more dogs. We used to have 16, 18 dogs, Huskies, tied to the front of this. And obviously we had the engine running, so we were able to control the speed the dogs were running at, and we were able, by and large, to stop the team, because without something like this you couldn't control 16 dogs. So that was that. Now, over the years we've done a few things to it. Just recently we replaced the 2 front wheels because they'd gone rotten, and the reason I've got the tires out there is because it's time for the rear wheels to be changed. I don't know if I can see that. Those wheels are really rotten. So we've ordered 2 new wheels and 2 new tires. That's the tires that arrived. So this is a bloody good machine. I mean, I say, we've had it all these years. We do very little to it. And right. say enough about these Hondas. I mean, they are absolutely brilliant, and yet this gets nothing but abuse. Because actually, well, I don't know, how they really designed them, what they designed the specification for them to be. But I mean, we hare around the forest in these, doing, I suppose, with when we're training with the dog team. The dog team are pulling, and we've got the engine running, but it's just to keep the tension on the line. The dogs are actually pulling it. So it's probably doing around 18 to 23 miles an hour. And then we're going around sharp left and right hand turns, and in the forest, in the fire breaks, and so there's a lot of stress on the joints on this thing when we're going around such sharp corners at that speed. And of course, it's always being driven in filthy weather, mud, not really getting salt though, obviously, but mud and everything, and it's not really cleaned. We never really clean it like that. So it gets a hell of a lot of abuse, and maybe once every couple of years we service it. It's terrible, really, but it keeps going. It's the same engine, Speedo on there. I think we've done about a couple of thousand miles in it, and that's in the forest. Probably maybe 3,000 or 4,000. Let's have a look. No, I must have had a senior moment. We've actually done 14,700. I know, because we fitted this Speedo when we first had the machine, because it didn't have one on it. This was obviously some sort of a optional extra, which we didn't have. It wasn't on it when I bought the bike, so I fitted it. So we've done 14,700 miles. That's with the dogs. It's almost exclusively with dogs. I mean, maybe all right, we can add 1,000 miles to that, I suppose. Tom's been using that recently in the wood here, towing the trailer, taking materials back and forth in the woods. And I did use it when I first had it. I went out in it a few times with some friends in the forest, but these forests we have around here, we're not allowed to use these machines. We only get permission to use them on the trails by the Forestry Commission, who they own, or they run the woods around here, the forests around here. We only get permission to use these when we've got a team of dogs, so they allow us to control the teams better, and but we're not really, well, we are not allowed to just go herring around in the forest on them. But years ago, maybe 20 odd years ago, we could, and I used to use them on the byways. So maybe there's another 1,000 miles. So we've got maybe 12,000 miles and 11 or 12,000 miles that we've used that for, with the Huskies pulling us. Bloody good machine, though, really good. So we're going to have 2 new wheels and tires fitted on the back. Now and again we blast it off and clean it, and it looks really good. Funny thing is, you look on YouTube and there's seems to be videos of everything on there, but there aren't. I couldn't find too many videos on these ATVs. Most of them are just sort of guys herring around in the mud and getting, actually a bit stupid. There doesn't seem to be any serious videos, what I would call serious, explaining about them a bit more, and really doing some proper work in them. Mind you, not that Husky racing or Husky training is serious work with them. Though that's been a really good machine for us. We did have, before we had that actually, we did have a racing version, or a racing quad, without an engine. It was bloody heavy, and the dogs used to pull that. Obviously, we could control big teams, and they would pull us at around 20 miles an hour without an engine, taking up any of the strain. But when we want to train small teams and actually try and get the speed up, because we can try and increase the speed that the dogs are running at by, the more we drive that thing faster and allow the dogs to run a little bit freer in front of us, we can train them to try and increase their speeds over the course. So, you know, when we set off, we're running maybe a 4 or 5 mile run, and obviously we don't stop. So, bang, we start off and we run around the forest for 4 or 5 miles. And the dogs are trained, and over the years they condition themselves to running at the same speed, which is what you want. So you get a good average speed. So we can try to control that speed and maybe increase it with using one of these, which is what we've done over the years. And then when they come to a race, of course, we don't race with these. We race with a lightweight rig that only weighs about 30 pounds, plus the driver on it. So the dogs are actually pulling. In a way, they've got less weight behind them to pull than they have when they're pulling that. So they tend to, you know, run freer, and all the time, obviously, they're trying to run a bit faster, but we try to keep constant speed with that. Anyway, there's one other thing that we used to use, but we don't use now. Never get a chance. These are our 2 of our sleds. These are basically racing sleds for dog racing, or in our case, Siberian Husky racing. I can't remember which. One of these we bought from Canada. It was made by a Canadian guy. I'm not sure which one it was now. I think it's this one here. And the other one is a copy that a friend of mine made a few years, quite a few years ago now. Yeah, I think this is the copy. The guy, right? So that one I think is the one we bought that from Canada, and that's a racing sled. Let's get it out. Right, yeah, this is the Canadian one. So this one, we bought this probably over 30 years ago from a guy in Canada who made them. That'll be his kennel name probably. So obviously this is called a brush bow here, and the dogs are the tow line, where the main line that runs down, and the dogs are on each side of it. That's hooked onto here, so that is pulling you. Brush bow here really is so that you don't run into the dogs. This, you'd carry a bag on it. When you're racing, we had a bag here that sort of kind of fitted and tied on, and the idea was that if you had a dog was injured or anything, you'd put the dog in the bag. But obviously when you're racing in Canada or somewhere where you're going for a long distance in the snow and you're away from everyone, you know, you're obviously not going to just leave a dog there. You can bring him back. But when we're racing in England now, we stopped that sort of system because it was pointless, you know, in a forest where we're only running 3 or 4 miles. It was more dangerous to try to bring a dog back. So you'd be standing on these runners here, and that's your brake, which basically is hooks that dig into the snow. So obviously this thing's meant for snow. So you've got these bungees here which pull it back up again. Of course the thing is all flexible. So you'd be running up hills, and you'd be running a lot in the snow, and then you'd have to, you know, be jumping back onto these, and the dogs would be pulling you, and you'd steer it, and it's bloody good fun. Anyway, let's get the other one out and see what the copy was like. Right, well, that's the copy here. So this was made by a guy I was friends with a few years ago. You can see that it's almost identical. Well, it is identical, really. Now, the guy that made this was really good. He made strip wood canoes, and he was really into bending wood and everything. So he was, you know, really into all this stuff. And his sled is, you know, just a dead copy of it. You wouldn't know the difference, to be honest with you. So we've got the same thing. We've got a brake. We've got the actually, my friend's one is. This copy is actually more flexible, and they need to be flexible because, see, when you're racing, and especially if you're going around sharp corners, you're bending and you're leaning over. These things are made to bend. so that's the... But actually, when he made these two, he... oh, sorry, another thing. On the bottom here, there's this plastic that's on there, that on the runners. Very heavy duty. Not sure what it's called, polyplex or something. That's on there. So that's the runners. But I'll just show you what my friend also made. Right, well, this is not a husky, this is a German Shepherd. Right, this is this sled is a copy of the big sled, and this was made by the same guy that made the copy, who was made canoes. So he made a number of copies because with the British Husky Racing Championship, we had one of these as a trophy for each year. It was one that you didn't keep the trophy, you returned it, but you had your name on it, so you had it for a year. But at the time when he made the original trophies, I had him make one for me, and so this was one that belongs to me, and I kept it. And here it's got a list of all the winnings that we've done on this particular race series. When I stopped racing the big teams, my wife, who had been running smaller teams, she carried on, and she actually it was more successful than me eventually, I think. I put it down to the fact she didn't weigh as much as me. So here some of the trophies that we've won over the years. Each one of these trophies, individual trophies here. Actually, there's more of them here, and there's more of them here. There's a lot, actually. Oh, each one of these trophies, each one of these trophies represents a race that we were in. This is going back over 30 years now, racing. These plaques here, each plaque is a year, and in each individual medallion is a race. So that's a year, a season of racing that particular year, and each one is at different positions. The reds are in England. A red means a first. I know in America that it's blue. It's the other way around. Blue is second in England. It's in America they call it a blue ribbon race, and in England the red is a first. So blues would be second, and then reds would be first. So that's 1 year. That's 1 year. But these are all individual races from different years that we were in. I mean, you know, these are from Scotland. I mean, you can see in Aviemore 88 and Aviemore 89. So all of these different years. Sometimes we went to a race and you won a little thing. More trophies in there. Now these here are the medals for that we've won for the. This is the British Sled Dog Racing Championship, and these medals are given for the first three positions. They're kind of like Olympic type medals, really. They hang from your neck. So gold is obviously the first, and silver is second. And there are more underneath. I think a lot of these are bronzes. I tended to have, when I was racing against a number of guys who were really great, and two of them were, though I beat them a number of times, they were basically better than me, and I ended up with lots of bronze medals, where my wife, she got some golds and silvers. I got a few silvers, but I never managed to get a gold, but my wife's won all these golds. So that's for a year. That's, you know, that means you're the champion for the year in that particular class. And she won the six dog class 3 years running, or 3 years. So that was pretty good. I was proud of that. That's another year's races. Some of these are mine, some of these are my wife's. There's more down here. It's probably a bit boring, all this. Right. So it just shows you all the years we've been racing. Now here is interesting. Let's go back to cars. This is Classic American magazine, and well, if I can get one of them out, they're pretty tight. Classic American magazine, and I've got every issue that's ever been made. I think we're up currently to 300 and something, so that's 300 and something months. Now, interestingly, one time I used to collect, I can't really get at it, but they brought out a number one, issue number one, and it sort of came out, that's it there, it came out as a bit of a odd one. It came out, and I think it was a couple of months before the second issue came out. I think they kind of did this as a pilot, and then they started doing them every month, or every month. I think maybe actually they were start off with they were every 2 months, but anyway. Now the point is, the number one that came out a long time ago. Let's have a look. Let's get one of them out. Right, so that's issue number one, and it was in 1988. So I bought the first issue, and then I carried on when they brought out more of them. I carried on buying them, and I'm still buying them, and I've got every one here. But I also at one time started to collect issue number one, and I've got back here. You can see there. I think I've got about 15 issue number ones, all in pretty good condition. I was thinking, well, maybe the first issue will be a collector's item. No, I don't think so. Anyway, I've got about, let's say, probably 15 of them. Right, well, that's most of the husky racing stuff. Well, there's a few more over here. These are my wife's, I think over the last few years, because each one of these is a year. So you can see she's got a lot of firsts on that year. A lot of firsts on that year. I think she won the championship that year. That's 6 dog, I think, in these years. So that's 4 years worth there. Right. Well, I think I better bring this video to an end because I spent too much time talking about. Look, he's bored as well. I've been talking too much about non-car events. That one over there is falling asleep. That one's asleep, and these are 2 sled dogs here. But so I think we better get back to cars in the next one.